All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another book study in the book of Revelation. Last week, if you remember, for a quick recap, we finished chapter 5, and today we're getting to chapter 6, Revelation chapter 6. This is what, when you talk to people about the book of Revelation, their minds usually go directly to Revelation 6 or somewhere between 6 and chapter 19. So we're going to get into some of that juicy stuff today and break down what it all means. But first, we'll recap the end of chapter 5 just to refresh our memories. Remember John, I talked about how he had the vision at the beginning of the book. Then he wrote the letter to the 7 churches. And after that, he was brought up into heaven and was seeing all these magnificent things, all this heavenly worship, we could say. And we finished up last week with verse 8. It said, "And when he had taken the scroll," that was the Lamb, remember Jesus Christ, "the 4 living creatures, the cherubim, and the 24 elders, the believers in Christ that are there, the saints, fell down before the Lamb, each holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints," which shows there's this heavenly worship going on. There's harps, signals music and worship, right? Just like we do out here on Sundays in church. And then prayer. So worship here included is music and prayer. Adoration for the Lord and intercession we're seeing is what's going on in the heavenly throne room. And they sang a new song. There's music there saying, "Worthy are you to take the scroll and to open the seals, for you were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation. And you have made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they shall reign on the earth." So they sing this new song. And usually a new song I talk about, it comes up throughout the Bible and the Psalms and other places. Just usually a new song of joy, new revelation here. It's been revealed that the Lord is able to open up to take the scroll here. So they're singing a joyful song about this great news and his glory and how he makes us kings and priests. Then right after this, as he sees them singing, he says, "I looked and I heard around the throne and the living creatures and the elders of the voice of many angels, numbering myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands." So now he sees all of a sudden, there's always these new things he sees. Remember, he saw these 4 beings. Then he saw elders. Then he saw this lamb that was supposed to be like a lion, but it's a lamb. And now all of a sudden appearing, there's all these thousands upon thousands, maybe an innumerable. He can't even number the angels that are there also singing, saying with a loud voice, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing." There's that 7-fold praise there, 7 of perfection, God's perfection and everything and completeness. And then after that, he heard every creature in heaven, if you remember, and on earth and under the earth, so everything dead, and in the sea. So basically everything in the universe. There's nothing hidden, nothing not participating in this, right? These creatures said, "To him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and might forever and ever." That's a 4-fold blessing, right? So then you have blessing, honor, glory, might. Why 4? Creation. Creation is usually symbolized by 4. The 4 corners of the earth, the 4 beings here, the 4 seasons. We'll get to the 4 horsemen, right? There's always those 4s. That's where that comes into play. But it's really amazing that this includes trees, rocks, dogs. So even they're talking here. I don't think it's like the serpent in the garden or anything like that. Who knows what this really means? But it's showing that all creation is glorifying the Lord here. And that's an interesting thought. And there's a cool Bible study you can do that includes that kind of a concept there. And then it says right after that, the 4 living creatures said, "Amen." I mean, they all were in agreement, and the elders fell down and worshiped. So everybody's worshiping the cherubim, the saints, the angels, and all of creation. And that's how we ended last week. And now we're in chapter 6. So let's see how far we can get in, because there's a lot to cover in these verses. Revelation 6, I'll put verse 1 and 2 together. They kind of go together, but we'll break them down one at a time. It says, "Now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures say with a voice like thunder, 'Come.' And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer." So it starts out here, verse 1, "Now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the 7 seals." So this marks a transition, right? I just talked about how we are in the heavenly throne room. Remember, John was weeping. Who can open? There's this scroll. The mighty angel says, "There's a scroll. Who can open it?" John weeps. Nobody can open it. And the Lamb was able to take it. That's where all that praise broke down. And now it's continuing on, right? And it's going to shift from heavenly worship in chapters 4 and 5 to now what's going on the earth, earthly judgment for chapters 6 through 19. So you can kind of see the book, it's kind of like a panning camera. It's like on Patmos. It's looking at John. John's writing these letters, and all of a sudden, boom, Now it's showing what's going on in the scene in heaven, and boom, now we're going to go back from, you're actually going to see from heaven to earth and what's going on. So it's going from heavenly worship to earthly judgment for these next couple of chapters. You can also see when he's talking about the Lamb opening one of the 7 seals, that recalls back to Daniel chapter 12. Daniel chapter 12, verse 4. Remember what Daniel was told. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. And it says, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. But the big point there, he was supposed to shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. So this kind of coincides. Whether people will debate, is this the exact book? Was Daniel handed this scroll? Is he the one that had to write all this stuff and seal it up and not tell us? There's a chance this is the actual one. Or maybe not, but it definitely coincides. Daniel was told to seal things up, and now the Lord is unveiling them. So you can kind of see that tied here. But the Lamb, Jesus Christ, is now beginning to execute judgments. He was getting worshipped there, and now he's executing judgments. And turn to Isaiah if you can. Isaiah chapter 26. And I want you to look at something, because if this is what I think Isaiah was talking about in this vision in chapter 26, go to verse 20. I believe this very moment, because you'll see where we're at in history, or should I say the future of history, because it is history still to God, future to us. Isaiah chapter 26, verse 20. And I believe this, like I said, this whole situation here, it'll kind of make sense to you for what is about to happen. And it's a perfect time to read it. Isaiah 26, verse 20. And I'll read 2 verses. I'll read 20 and 21. I'll give you guys a chance to get there. Yep, Isaiah 26, verse 20 and 21. Here's what my translation says. Come, my people, enter your chambers, and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourselves for a little while until the fury has passed by. For behold, the Lord is coming out from his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity, it's their sin. And the earth will disclose the bloodshed on it and will no more cover its slain. So often when I talk about the rapture, actually, and people say, well, I don't see rapture in the Bible, and I can go in the whole, you've probably seen me talk about harpazo and how it's in there, and rapturo and Latin. But besides it being in the New Testament, it's actually all over in typology and even in verses like this in the Old Testament. Look what it says. Come, my people, that would be believers in the Lord, the saints like us. Enter your chambers. Remember what the Lord says, in my house are many mansions, many chambers, many rooms, right? Shut your doors behind you. So I believe this was referring to the rapture. He takes us and hides us, right? Why does the rapture happen? Because we're not appointed to wrath. What's about to happen after these seals break open? The wrath of the Lord, right? We're supposed to hide ourselves for a little while until the furies pass by. For behold, the Lord is coming out from his place. That would be heaven, to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. This is where, when Isaiah wrote about this is kind of what's taking place now. Chapter 4, I talked about in the beginning when he says, come up here. I believe that symbolized us, the saints, being brought up into heaven, being hidden away, like Isaiah 26 says, in these chambers, whatever that may mean. This is earthly language. I don't know if we actually have rooms or not, however it works, but it's talking about a real event because the fury of the Lord is going to happen, and this is it. This is where the judgments begin. So I believe this is kind of the turning point here from chapter 4 to chapter 6 here. You're kind of seeing that dealt with here. And of course, remember, so when he opens up these seals, we're going to find out this is history unfolding. Every time he opens it out, the plan of God's, the future for us, history for God, God's plan unfolds. But remember, he's opening this up to get that title deed of the earth, right? Reclaiming the earth is why he took that scroll. And it says further on in that first verse, I heard one of the 4 living creatures say with a voice like thunder, come. So remember, the 4 living creatures, who are they? Well, this isn't hard for us because we've been reading it in chronological order. The 4 living creatures are the cherubim, those 4 beings, right? Those strange beings that are right around the throne. They actually partake in these judgments, right? They call forth. Lord gives them the authority, and one by one, you're going to see, we're going to run into these, what they call the 4 horsemen, right, of the apocalypse. There's 4 of them, but there's 4 beings, and each time a horseman comes out, the being is calling them out. So they have some authority here. You see the voice like thunder. That's divine authority and power. It's not that these cherubim are in charge of the plan, but God gave them authority, right? Like when a manager puts in charge a supervisor, right? Like this is their job to kind of coordinate this stuff. So one of these beings here, one of the 4 beings says, come. Now he's not talking to John saying, John, come over here and look at this. He's saying, it's more like saying, go forth, right? Come to the earth, go forth. He's calling out the first horse you're going to see. So it's this declaration, loud like thunder, and thunder often in the Bible accompanies God's active presence and power. So we're going to see God's presence and power unleashed here, right? But that's not directed towards John, I don't think. I believe it's to the rider that we're going to see here. But this is all marking, this is the beginning of the tribulation. So this is why people will ask me like, hey, Eric, I know that you love the Bible and Revelation. What chapter of Revelation are we in? What part? What plague are we in, right? I don't think we're in any of them yet. I think if you ask me, we're at the end of chapter 3. We're in that last, we're in the last church age, the 7th church, right? I talked about that before. We're ready to enter, when we get raptured, I think that's chapter 4, part 1. So we're still back at the end of chapter 3 when people talk about, oh, do you see this is happening, I think it's unfolding. Not according to our futurist standpoint and how the Bible looks here. This is when it begins, and it'll be able to be clear of how this begins. But because it's the beginning of the tribulation, that's also tied to Daniel chapter 9. Why do I say that? Because we're always talking about Daniel's 70 weeks. This begins that 70th week. The 69 weeks were completed, remember? And then Christ rode in. He was killed and cut off. And since then, we've been in the church age, right? Once the Holy Spirit came. And the rapture will turn everything from the church focus back on to Israel, like the rest of the Bible was before the church showed up. It was always focused on Israel. Gentiles were always included. That was the mystery of the plan. God always wanted to save the Gentiles. But it's going to turn back to Israel. And remember, those 70 weeks, if you read Daniel, is designed for Israel. And it's even focused on Jerusalem, which you're going to see a lot of Jerusalem talking here. But this is the start of that 7-year tribulation. This is where we get the 7 years from. And you can see it. We'll see it throughout Revelation. 3.5 years, 1,260 days, 42 months. It'll be written in all these different ways. So we know it's 7 years. Also, turn to Matthew chapter 24. This will help you understand. This is another debate. What is Jesus talking about? Maybe we won't get raptured because look what Jesus says about this in Matthew 24 in the end times. All this stuff. It's like, well, what we're going to find out here is Jesus isn't talking about a rapture. He never really talked about it much anyway. That was when that was a thing disclosed later on. It was hidden throughout the Bible. But Matthew chapter 4, this talks about the tribulation. There's a tribulation chapter. Matthew chapter 24, and just go to verse 3. We'll skip to verse 3 for now. This whole chapter is great to read and correspond it with Revelation 6 and on. You'll be able to see, especially chapter 6. Matthew 24 and Revelation 6, you'll see some chapters really correlate with this chapter. Matthew 24, verse 3. As he sat on the Mount of Olives, that's Jesus, the disciples came to him privately saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And Jesus answered them, "See that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name saying, 'I am the Christ,' and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation," sounds like war, "and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are what? But the beginning of the birth pains." So you're going to see what we just read right here, we're going to see unfold in chapter 6, actually in chronological order. You don't even have to scramble them up to make sense of it. Jesus puts them right in order as you read through that, which is very, very interesting. And verse 8 is interesting to me because it doesn't say, "And then I will come back. Then I show up in the sky." No, it says, "All these are but the beginning of the birth pains." Now, some people will argue and say, well, these aren't signs of the end times because we all know there have been famines. There have been false messiahs. There's a couple people on earth today that claim to be Jesus. Like, there's weird stuff that happens. There's famines. There's wars. That's nothing new. Correct, that's nothing new. But this is going to be at such a height, such a level that's never been seen before. And I know that gets used all the time in our world. Something like never been seen before. This will literally, something that's never been seen before. Wars like you've never been seen before. Famine, economic collapse like you've never seen before. Earthquakes like you've never seen. We've had bad earthquakes. There's never been one this bad as what we'll see here. And this is what Jesus is getting at. So if you read Matthew chapter 24, Revelation 6 will make a lot more sense to you as we go through this. But it's really what Jesus kind of laid out here, what you don't even realize, is the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? And we'll see another book that follows right along with this, which is amazing. Not just Matthew 24, but Zechariah chapter 1 and chapter 6. Go to Zechariah near the end of the Old Testament. Because remember, Zechariah was written when they came back from Babylon. So they came back to Jerusalem and Israel, right? After being taken captive to Babylon. And Zechariah was supposed to write this. Go to Zechariah 1 and go to verse 8. We'll start there. And I got to show you this. Some people might not know this. Some of you guys are probably aware of this. But the 4 horsemen have been around for a long time. They don't show up in the future. They've been around for a long time. Zechariah chapter 1 and go to verse 8. And here's what my translation says. I'll read verse 11. "I saw in the night, and behold, a man riding on a red horse. He was standing among the myrtle trees in the glen, and behind him were red, sorrel, and white horses. Then I said, what are these, my lord? The angel who talked with me said to me, I will show you what they are. So the man who was standing among the myrtle trees answered, these are they whom the Lord has sent to patrol the earth. And they answered the angel of the Lord who was standing among the myrtle trees and said, we have patrolled the earth, and behold, all the earth remains at rest. So there's these horsemen that we're about to see here in chapter 6. And they're out here patrolling the earth according to Zechariah, and all remains at rest. Now go to chapter 6. Go to chapter 6 now, a couple chapters later, Zechariah 6. And this one really correlates with what's going on in Revelation 6. Zechariah chapter 6, and I'll start at verse 1. Again, I lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, 4 chariots came out from between 2 mountains. And the mountains were mountains of bronze. So it comes from basically God's throne room, it sounds like again. The first chariot had red horses. The second, black horses. The third, white horses. And the fourth chariot, dappled horses, all of them strong. Then I answered and said to the angel who talked with me, what are these, my Lord? And the angel answered and said to me, these are going out to the 4 winds of heaven. Some say the 4 spirits of heaven, after presenting themselves before the Lord of all the earth. The chariot with the black horses goes toward the north country, while the white one goes after them. The dappled ones goes toward the south country. When the strong horses came out, they were impatient to go and patrol the earth. And he said, go patrol the earth. So they patrolled the earth. Then he cried to me, behold, those who go toward the north country have set my spirit at rest in the north country. So what's going on with all this? Why did Zechariah get this vision of the 4 horsemen? Because these 4 horsemen, you can see these colors, dappled instead of pale or chloros. We'll get to that then. But why is Zechariah seeing these same horses? Because it doesn't sound much like the 4 horsemen we know about that bring what we all know they bring. We'll talk about it here. Well, that's because what was going on in time. Zechariah, like I said, they had come back from Babylon. Why were they patrolling the earth? To show peace? Because of what had just happened, right? So they were going to patrol the earth, and it shows that these are 4 spirits. I don't think they're the cherubim, because the cherubim call them out. There's some angelic beings. I don't know what rank they are, but they're symbolized by these horsemen or these horses or these chariots, and they patrol the earth to make sure God's plan. So they must help bring God's plan into being with nations, kind of over nations and affairs, and you're going to see that today. Human affairs that God put them in control of to have influence over. Why again? Well, why is there peace on the earth? Well, because Israel has been punished like they were supposed to. That's the reason they got taken into Babylon, and Babylon has now been conquered by Persia. Now the horsemen come out and say, all right, it's settled. Israel's been punished. Babylon got conquered. All right, we've had peace on the earth for a little while, right? Because there's still going to be wars and stuff. But they're there patrolling the earth to show that God's phase of this judgment was over, right? There was peace. But we're going to see them show up again now, and there needs to be judgment poured out on the earth in the affairs of humanity, as we're going to see. So these 4 horsemen are not brand new to Revelation like some people think. They have been in Zechariah. They were mentioned back in Zechariah. Because remember, Revelation is a remix of it's showing how God's plan for Revelation, the end times, was always built throughout the Bible there. As we get to verse 2, it says, he looked then, right? So he heard this voice of thunder, one of those 4 living creatures. I looked, and behold, a white horse. That's one of those riders. And its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. So he looks, behold, a white horse. What's this white horse? Often referred to, the first horse is the horse of conquest, right? The white horse symbolizes victory, conquest, and also purity, or at least purity in appearance, right? Purity in appearance. Why do I say that? Because this is the Antichrist. You're going to read some commentators sometimes, especially if they're preterists, or they say that everything happened historically and this is all in the past. They're going to say this is Jesus Christ riding out on a horse. Why do they say that? Well, because Revelation 19, it talks about Jesus coming in riding a horse at the end for his second coming, right? My problem is I don't think one, that Jesus rides a horse down for the judgments. And also remember, the Lamb's the one opening the scroll. So is he opening the scroll? And and he's coming down to the earth. And then after him, all the evil things we're going to see that happen after this white horse doesn't seem to add up to me, right? Why a white horse? Because I think he's imitating Christ. What did Jesus start out in Matthew 24? The first thing he said is there's going to be people coming saying, I am the Christ. Do not believe them. They are false messiahs. This is the first example. You're going to see Matthew 24 run right in order like Jesus warned us what's going to happen. That's why this is the Antichrist. This is not Jesus Christ, because Jesus doesn't bring all the stuff of famine and or all this kind of stuff with him. He brings peace, right? He brings peace. But white is purity in appearance. So he has the illusion of being this peaceful leader. And this is part of Satan's strategy all the time. He uses deception. That's why he's an angel. He can appear as an angel of light. He can sound like good things, right? We actually say when you have the spirit of discernment, it's not to determine between what's right and wrong. It's to determine between what's right and almost right. That's how Satan gets you. He doesn't say what's wrong. He says what's almost right to get you convinced. So he's going to do a lot of things that look peaceful, just like a Messiah would, to save the day. He loves everybody. He's going to bring the world together, right? He is a ripoff, Jesus. He is a counterfeit Jesus Christ, and we're going to see that. Satan often imitates God's truth, right? So he's going to mimic the appearance of Christ's future triumph when he rides in on the white horse. But this Antichrist pattern is very important to understand. This is a pattern that's going on since the beginning of the Bible, and you can find Antichrist pattern through individuals throughout the Bible over and over and over again. You can even see, and I am a firm believer, because remember, Satan doesn't know the end times. Satan doesn't have this guy. Satan didn't have, when Jesus left for heaven, I know exactly the guy I'm going to have and the exact year I'm going to have to bring him out. Why? Because Satan's like us. Nobody knows the hour or the day. So in my opinion, Satan has somebody in the wings, right? An apprentice, somebody ready. There's always an Antichrist, I believe, on the earth right now somewhere that if Satan would need to, could usher him in, right? And that's why people have been going on in history. Is this the Antichrist? Was he the Antichrist? People thought Hitler was the Antichrist. People thought, all these people. Nero was the Antichrist. They are prototypes. They're versions. They're types of Antichrist, but they were not the ultimate fulfillment. I don't even think Satan knows. He just always has a guy ready to go because Jesus is on the other side of the door, right? Remember, all these things are about to unfold. So I think there's somebody waiting in the wings. And we can see patterns of this. For example, the things that we're going to see the Antichrist do in the tribulation that we're talking about, you can see what's done before. For example, one of the first ones, Cain. Remember Cain and Abel? You don't think about Cain being an Antichrist figure until you realize, what did he do? He was the first murderer. What does Satan do? What does the Antichrist do? Murders. Not only that, those who follow God. Abel is technically the first martyr. That's why his blood cries out. And you're going to see that kind of language used with martyrs. So you can see that pattern started back with Cain. Kedorlaomer. A lot of people aren't as familiar with Kedorlaomer, but if you remember, he's the one that Abraham defeated. He's the one that stole away Lot, right? But he was an evil king who ruled over other evil kings, and so he was kind of an Antichrist. Took Lot, which is a symbol of the Antichrist, persecuting Israel like he's going to do. Pharaoh, this is an easy one. We're talking about Pharaoh. Pastor Brad's teaching on Pharaoh in the sermons here. You're going to see a lot of the plague language used here. Why? Because it's very reminiscent of a world leader. Pharaoh was a world dictator leader, that what he said went. And he even claimed to be, by the way, he claimed to be the son of God, which is exactly what the Antichrist is going to claim to be, the son of God. He's not going to say, I'm the son of Ra, like the Pharaoh said, but he's going to say, I'm the son of God. Same pattern. Abimelech, Gideon's son, he killed all the people of Israel to take over. That's what the Antichrist is going to do. King Saul, he was an Antichrist prefigure. He was the evil king that came before David, right? So the Antichrist is the son of evil coming before the son of David. You can see those kind of things. Absalom, David's son. His name means father of peace. That was a lie, right? He used smooth talking to take power. You're going to see the Antichrist do that. He was actually a man of blood, and he actually drove out all of David's followers from Jerusalem. It's exactly what the Antichrist is going to do. And then, of course, King Herod in the New Testament. He pretended to want to worship. He fooled everybody. Oh, where's this king? Where's this baby king? I want to go worship him. What did he want to do? He wanted to kill him, right? He had ulterior motives. And he was a threat to the Israelites. So you see that. I listed a bunch of names there, but there's one big one. The ultra prototype. And I believe the first actual Antichrist, maybe in almost the fullest form, because Cain had hints of it. Kedorlaomer, all that kind of stuff. It was Nimrod. Nimrod, why? Who is Nimrod? The king of Babylon, the first king ever. You'll never find a king in the Bible before Nimrod. Go to Genesis chapter 10. Go to Genesis chapter 10 at the beginning of your Bibles and go to verse 6. Nimrod, king of Babylon. That's why it's as we go through Revelation, you guys are familiar with Revelation, as you go through Revelation, it talks about Babylon. It'll mention the king of Babylon, talk about Babylon and the fall of Babylon. Why? Who built Babylon? We're going to find out. Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10, verse 6. I'm going to read just 6 to 12 here. Genesis 10, verse 6. The sons of Ham, it's talking about the descendants, remember, of Noah. These are the table of nations. All the nations after the flood story, right? The sons of Ham. Remember, Ham was the cursed one. So it's a cursed bloodline already. Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, and Sebteka. The sons of Rama, Sheba, and Dedan. Cush fathered who? Nimrod. He was, the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. And by the way, before the Lord doesn't mean in a good way. It's a bad way, almost a mocking of God. Mighty hunter, not so much maybe of animals as much of men, we think. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel. There's Babylon. Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land he went into Assyria and built, look at that, Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. That is the great city. So right there you get a sneak peek. It's only a very little narrative in Genesis chapter 10. This is the guy. He was the first dictator. Why was this a problem? Because God commanded them to go be fruitful and multiply over the whole earth. And what did he do? Come consolidate under me. I'm going to rule the world. I'm going to start building cities. This is where the birth of cities are. Cities were brand new. And when cities were built, it was a sin because they were supposed to be spreading out all over the world. Notice he built a lot of cities, but one, Babylon, that's used all over the place. Babylon, man's city instead of God's city. But also you notice Nineveh. And what do we know about Babylon and Nineveh? Well, Nineveh's in Assyria, the capital of Assyria. And the Assyrians came and took Israel captive and took them out of their land. And then who took the south out? Babylon. So all of Nimrod's creations, those cities, those places are the ones that actually are used by the Lord to cause damage to Israel and Judah, take them out of their land. So you can see the repercussions. Go to chapter 11, the next chapter, and look what happened again at the Tower of Babel. This very antichrist behavior. These are the people saying this, but they're under the command of Nimrod, as we just read in Genesis 10, or we'd wonder, who's doing this? Nimrod. He's the antichrist type here. He's the king of Babylon. Verse 4, then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing they propose to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and therefore confuse the language, so they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, or Babylon, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there and the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. So remember, that was what I often refer to as the third rebellion. But the Tower of Babel, right after the flood, Nimrod, the great-grandson of Noah, by the way, that's who this is, builds this. And why do I say that he's the ultimate Antichrist? Well, one, we have hints of it because of the Babylon language, although we've seen it before. But one, he comes from a cursed bloodline. The Antichrist is going to come from a cursed bloodline. He's going to counterfeit Christ. He's going to have an evil spiritual father and an earthly mother. So you can see he comes from a cursed line just like he did, because he came from Ham. Ham was cursed with that whole Noah story. He defied God. God says, send people out. He said, no, gather, come to me, listen to me. So there he is, Antichrist there. Pride and arrogance. Why are they doing this? To make names for ourselves, probably for Nimrod, so he can sit on a throne and say Nimrod, the god of Babylon, or the king of Babylon. It was all pride. And the Antichrist we're going to see is all about his own worship, and worship me, and I'll be the great leader of the world with all of my cities. He's a world leader. So he wasn't just a king over Babylon, but he had all those other cities. What's the Antichrist going to do? He's going to do that. He's going to be probably leader over the cities, eventually Jerusalem, but he's going to roll over all these other cities that he's in charge of, right? One world government. That's exactly what the Antichrist is going to do. Nimrod had a world empire, basically, he was building here. The Antichrist is going to do the same exact thing. And again, like I said, he was the first king of Babylon, and you'll see the Babylon imagery in Revelation. The thing I love about this whole story, though, so Nimrod's the Antichrist, and you see him build these cities, you see they're doing all these great things, but the story doesn't end with Nimrod living on into the sunset as a king. It actually ends with the city being dispersed. The tower is not finished. It's not built, and they're scattered. They can't speak the same language anymore. They're confused. Who did it? The Lord. What did he do when he saw this coming to fruition? He came down, right? So again, follow the pattern. This is an Antichrist end times pattern that was written back in Genesis. You have this leader. He builds these cities, tries to take over the world, and the Lord comes down to stop it. That's exactly what we're going to see here as we read through Revelation 6 on. An Antichrist figure like Nimrod, who wants to rule the whole world, wants his own praise, wants to be worshipped, and the Lord is going to come down and stop him so he doesn't fulfill what he would be able to do otherwise. Now let's look at the rest of the verse there. It says, and its rider had a bow. So this horseman's rider had a bow. What does a bow represent? Power and authority and conquest. It's like a bow and arrow, right? It's used as a weapon. But what's interesting, it doesn't say a bow with arrows. And I know this picture has an arrow, but there's really no arrows mentioned here. Why are there no arrows mentioned here? Because I think it's going to be a bloodless victory. There's going to be no need to shoot bullets or shoot arrows at people. Why do I say that? Because he's going to be political, a politician. He's going to be a diplomat. He's going to be so good at talking. He's going to be a smooth talker. He's so good that if we were around, we might want to listen to him. Because he sounds, we're going to make world peace. I don't want the Jews to be hurt anymore by the Palestinians. I want the Palestinians to be saved. I don't want Russia and Ukraine to war. I want the United States and China and Iran. I want everybody to get along, and I have a plan. And I love you all. And I think there's a way we can do it. He's going to do all these smooth things. He's not going to need bullets or arrows to take over. That's why I believe there are no arrows here. He's a politician, a smooth talker. He's going to win with his words and again, he's a counterfeit of Christ. When Christ comes back, he doesn't use bullets. He uses words, right? But he uses words to kill in the end, right? So there's another counterfeit. He's going to use words to try to take over, right? Which this exactly aligns with Daniel chapter 9, right? Daniel chapter 9, verse 20. Actually, turn to Daniel because we'll cover a couple passages here. We'll actually run out of time here in a little bit, but that's okay. Go to Daniel chapter 9, verse number 27. Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. And you see again, this lays right in line with what I'm talking about here. The bow with no arrows. Why? Daniel 9, verse 27. And it says, and he shall make a strong covenant, or a really good agreement, with many for 1 week. All right? This is, again, the beginning of the tribulation. Why did the tribulation not begin? Because Daniel 9 talks about the 70th week beginning with this peace treaty. He's not going to need arrows. He's not going to need bullets. He's going to say, here, let's sign a 7-year deal, and he's going to sign it with the many, Israel, and all the nations around them, to agree at peace, no more war. Let the Jews build their third temple. Let them build the temple and do their sacrifices. Let's just everybody get along. Sign right here on this dotted line. Make me the leader. Make me the leader, sign here, and we're going to have peace. At least 7 years of it. So just trust me. So that's what it's talking about. Again, this is why we're not in the tribulation. We're seeing beginnings. We saw the Abraham Accords a couple years ago, and you see the peace deals talking now. These, again, are preliminaries. If you see something signed today and we're still here, it's not the Antichrist. If it's a 7-year deal and they're able to build their temple, we're not going to see that. We're getting closer. You're starting to see peace talks. It's laying the foundations. When the Antichrist shows up, it's going to be super simple for him. Satan was going to give him all the plan. He's going to roll it out, and he's going to be able to sign a 7-year deal, and they're going to love it, and the people will keep this deal. Go back another chapter of Daniel, Daniel 8, if you're still there. Daniel 8, and look at verse 23, and we'll read 23, 24, and 25. Daniel chapter 8, verse 23. And at the latter end of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their limit, a king of bold face, one who understands riddles, shall arise. His power shall be great, but not by his own power. And he shall cause fearful destruction and shall succeed in what he does and destroy mighty men and the people who are the saints. By his cunning he shall make deceit prosper under his hand. There it is. And in his own mind he shall become great. Without warning he shall destroy many. And he shall even rise up against the prince of princes, and he shall be broken, but by no human hand. Also, again, talking about the Antichrist and what's about to take place here. You can see he's going to make deceit prosper under his hand. This is the beginning of the deceit. The 7-year deal he's going to sign with Israel and the whole world. This is the beginning of that. Look what the rest of the verse here says in Revelation 6, verse 2. And a crown was given to him. A crown. So again, there's all different kinds of crowns. I was talking about that before. What kind of crown is this? Well, it says Stephanos in the Greek. What kind of crown is Stephanos one? That's the kind that we get. It's a victor's wreath. It's not a king. It's not a wreath of like king, but it's a victor's. So it's showing that he has victory in what he's going to do. It's not a royal crown like Christ has, but it's a victory crown. So he's a victor in what he's pulling off here. But it also shows, look at, he didn't take a crown was given to him. What does that mean? Well, Romans 13, I'll read this. Romans 13, verse 1. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God. And those that exist have been instituted by God. So you can even say here that God gives them the crown. That doesn't make sense at first, but if you think about it, it does. Why would God give the Antichrist the crown? So all of his plan could be fulfilled. Satan and the Antichrist are actually walking right into God's trap again, just like they did with the cross. Why did God have allow the son to be killed? Part of the plan. He allowed them to walk into their trap. He's allowing them to walk into the trap again. He has been the one. God gave him the crown ultimately. However, I do think it has a dual meaning. God gave him the crown, but who else did? All the other leaders of the earth, all the other presidents, the prime ministers that you see, if they're still ruling or whoever is ruling at that time, will gladly give him the power, I think. I don't think there's going to be a big struggle for it. I think he's going to be this greatest leader. And you know what? We should have a globalized world. We should have a one world government. We can get rid of war and all this poverty and all this stuff. That's why, because we have countries and nations. That's what's ruining us, right? And remember, that whole Tower of Babel thing is tied to nations, right? And gathering together globally, right? So the plan is being fulfilled, but I think all the world leaders are also going to grant him, without an election maybe even, just say, this guy's in charge, he's got the plan, let's make him president of earth, right? King of the earth. He's a counterfeit of Christ. I talked about this before. We actually, if you guys aren't aware of this, when we see New World Order, and we're like, we don't want a New World Order, the NWO, the New World Order, they're at the World Economic Forum again, they're planning the cryptocurrency, they're doing this, they're setting up the peace deal, they're doing all these kind of things. Remember, that's a counterfeit, because we do want a one world order. We want a one world government. That sounds confusing to us. Why? Because Jesus Christ is going to be the king of it. Jesus Christ is going to rule the whole world. We do want a one world government, but not any man. I never want to be under a one world government of humanity, because this is what it looks like, what you're going to see unfold in Revelation 6. We want Jesus to rule over. So we do want a one world order, but not the one that Satan's going to have with the Antichrist. It's the counterfeit of what we want. So the New World Order will be good when Jesus is in charge, but the one that we talk about usually when we say New World Order we don't want, it's because of this false peace, false economic success, false no more wars, all this kind of stuff is what's going on here. And then that verse ends there when it says, and he came out conquering and to conquer. So he came out conquering and to conquer. This kind of shows continuing conquest, right? It doesn't just say that he came out and he conquered. Conquering and to conquer, it seems like he's conquered. He gets that crown, he takes in charge, but there's still work he's got to do. It's not over, because there's going to be no real peace, right? He's a charismatic world leader that offers unity and peace, but later he becomes a dictator who demands worship. We know that. No spoiler alert, I'm sure most of you guys are aware of this, that halfway through that 7 years, he'll turn right into a dictator and be proud to tell you. At first, he's going to act like, I'm here for the world, I'm here for everybody, I'm just all about you guys. And halfway through, it'll be all about me. And I'm the king, and I'm sitting on the throne. That's exactly what the Antichrist will do. So this will continue on. His conquering, at first he conquers with peace, with his words, but eventually we'll see that it'll get worse and worse. And again, remember Matthew 24, Jesus talked about this. Many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ. And what will they do? They will lead many astray. That's the ultimate version of what we're talking about. Also, 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 3. What does 1 Thessalonians 5:3 say? While people are saying there's peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them. This is what it's talking about. Everybody's going to have peace. It's going to be secure. The world's going to be good. It's going to be peaceful and secure. That's when the destruction will begin, as we're going to see. So this is the false peace before the storm. You know, they say when it gets quiet before the storm, that's exactly what this is going to be in the ultimate sense, right? His peace is deception. It's a counterfeit, not like Christ. And what you're going to see, like I said, come after this. Christ's peace never brings war, never brings famine, never brings earthquakes. So don't let people try to tell you this is Jesus. It does not make sense. Why? Well, we can actually even look at this contrast before I end here. Christ wears many crowns, many diadems. If you read Revelation 19, you can go ahead if you want. Revelation 19 verse 12 says he has many crowns. This guy here has a single crown. And it's not a royal one. It's a diadem. It's a victor's crown, Stephanos. Christ also has, his is the sharp sword of his word, right? This one carries a bow without arrows. A little bit more deception there. And Christ brings true lasting peace, like I said, while this is more temporary and deceptive peace, just so he can gain power. We only had time to get into 2 verses, because if I'd start verse 3, it would take another 25 minutes probably. So we're just going to stop right here, and we'll see. There's so much to unpack, as you guys can see, with these 4 horsemen. There's going to be plenty more as we continue on and get to them. But does anybody have any questions or comments or any clarity they want on anything there that we just mentioned there in the first 2 verses of Revelation 6? Or the rants I went on about, the king of Babylon and all that stuff. Anybody have anything? Yeah, Paul.
Scary part of all this is that it's all been played out already.
Yeah.
This is start to finish. It's done.
Yeah.
And where I find myself in with that.
So are you talking about like how this has already been played out in the past, or how like,
Yes.
or how it's already going, or it's already done in the future?
Yeah. At the
All of
end,
it.
this is already all done.
Yes.
But now we're living.
We're living in it. It's one of the weirdest situations because usually, I love what Paul points out here. When we read the Bible, we're talking about, oh, then King David did that. I remember, reading about that, and that was back then. And Jesus died on the cross for us. That was, 2,000 years ago. What's weird is we're reading about this, and obviously the Antichrist hasn't come made this deal yet, and all the famine that we're talking about hasn't come yet, but it actually has happened. This actually is history. It's just mind-blowing. We're like movie characters in the middle of a movie getting told how the movie ends because the movie's already done, right? When somebody hands you a movie to watch, remember back in the day when they give you a VHS tape? We don't do that anymore. Here's a VHS tape, so you had to rewind it first. And if you put that in, if you watched it, you knew how it ended. Even if you're halfway through, you say, it's over. Why? Because that film, when you actually got it, was history. You're just watching it in a linear fashion. This is the same thing with God. That's why this is actually history to God. How we read David and Jesus and Adam and Eve, God would read Revelation the same way. Back then, back when the Antichrist tried to take over, back when he thought he was going to stop me, and back when I rode down and took over the earth for 1,000 years. It blows our mind. When we study science and time, it actually makes a little bit more sense, but not a lot, because it's just so bizarre to know that the future is already done. There's nothing you can do to stop this. And I love talking to people who said, well, if we're around, which I don't think we will be, I'll just kill the Antichrist. I go, well, wait till you get later on in the book. You're going to find out you're in there, right? Because there's going to be people that are going to try to do this. Well, I'll just kill them. Doesn't work. You're going to see that actually plays right into the plan. So no matter what, none of us, there's nothing we could ever do to stop it. Even killing the Antichrist is part of the plan. So there's nothing we'd ever do to stop it. Paul's exactly right. Now we just have to live through it. We don't have to live through all this, I don't believe. That's our hope, that the Lord will take us out, because we're not appointed to wrath, right? We're not appointed to the wrath. There's all those patterns I talk about. If you go watch my whole thing on the rapture in my eschatology series, we're not appointed to wrath. We're not going to have to go through this. It's for the earth dwellers, that's what I call them, those who deny the Lord among the nations, and to bring Israel back to him. So praise the Lord, we're not going to go through this, but some people, maybe people we know, I mean, we are close. Look at all these signs. We are close. Potentially people we know could go through this, which is all the more reason to tell them about the gospel of Jesus Christ, so they don't have to go through any of this either, and they can be protected from their demise. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Yeah, Bill.
Something strange. Go back 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading some of all the green stuff.
Yep.
Well, if they, the Antichrist or the peace without following was, remember Nikita Khrushchev?
Yeah.
They figured he was the peace of peace because we had the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yep.
He came in and solved that without any blood being shed
Yep.
and whatnot.
Like this, yeah.
So he was featured as being one of the Antichrists.
Yes.
Because he could do without killing anybody.
Correct.
Like you're talking, there's no bow.
There's no arrows in the bow.
But it's strange. You go back 60 years,
Mm-hmm.
and how many people here today even remember Nikita Khrushchev for what he was?
Exactly.
But he was part of an Antichrist. So there's many Antichrists in this day.
Yep. If you go back in history, kind of what Bill is saying, like I was saying, you will see Antichrist type of figures, not even from the Bible, modern history, right? And people will even talk about today, like, who's behind this Israel peace deal that's going on right now in our time? Because they want to be like, is he the Antichrist? Don't waste your time, because we'll never know. And I'll get in later about how he might not even be on the scene right now. He's probably around, but laying low, the little horn, with not a lot of power right now. But he's going to do the same things that we've seen done over and over. And it's happened, and Satan's probably ready. Satan might even thought, this is our time. This is back with the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is when it happens. That was not when it happens, but it is going to happen. That's why these patterns happen over and over again. That's why they say in the Bible, if you can learn the past and how the Bible worked, you can actually predict the future with somewhat of an accuracy. Because it's a loop, like a song, right? Like verse 1 and verse 2 have different words of a song. Sound exactly the same, though. It's the same melody, the same progression, and that's how it works in the Bible. So, yeah, thank you for that, Bill. Anybody else have anything else they want to add or questions or something? Well, thanks again, everybody, for coming on out. Go ahead, read ahead in Revelation chapter 6. If you want, go back, look at Zechariah 6 again and Matthew 24. You'll see how they all coordinate and coincide with all these things. But keep on reading. Thanks again for coming out. Until next time, keep your lamps trimmed and burning.